Good evening, everyone, and welcome. After a bit of a hiatus here for 3 days, the Joe and Joe Weather Show on this Monday, Memorial Day, the last day of the month of May, the last day of meteorological spring. Tomorrow's the first day of meteorological summer, and it is also the start of hurricane season. The Joe and Joe Weather Show brought to you by Omni True Value Hardware at 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon, New York, on Long Island, serving the entire tri-state area. 631-756-1125. They have the best prices in town. OmniTrueValue.com. And also brought to you by Wholesale Holiday Lighting by Giannini, your complete holiday lighting specialist, meeting all your decorating needs. Whether you want your home decorated or maybe you want to consider this as a business and make it your own business, get there at 162 Ocean Avenue in Lindenhurst, New York, also on Long Island. And their telephone number is 631-957-5106. The website is liholidaylighting.com. So I kind of like I kind of like what Norm Dvoskin said about this Memorial Day weekend, that people are starting their barbecues to keep warm.
Yeah. Joe, it's unbelievable. The Saturday and Sunday, 2 days of the holiday weekend, those 2 days were colder, much colder, in fact, than December 24th, Christmas Eve, which was 59 at Central Park, and Christmas Day, which was 61 at Central Park. Those 2 days, Saturday and Sunday, were in the lower 50s. I think it was 51 on Saturday and 52 on Sunday. Absolutely ridiculous. But
yeah, there were
low
high temperature records set all over the place this weekend. Albany, Poughkeepsie, Philadelphia, among
and they didn't
others.
They didn't just break those records. They shattered the record. I mean, I think at Central Park the low high for Saturday was 59, and as I just said, it was like 51, 52 on Saturday. Ridiculous. They broke it by like 7 or 8 degrees. I mean, I actually went back and looked at the almanac and said, "Is this an all-time for the month of May?" That was not the case. The all-time lowest low high was in the early part of the month at 45, right. But still, it was absurd. It really was.
Well, I mean, seasonally adjusted. I mean, if you want to seasonally adjust it and make a comparison, you'd have to have a day in January where temperatures probably, didn't get above the single digits.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible. Well, and of course the weather turned lovely in the latter part of the day today, just in time for everybody who had gone someplace to pack up their bags, throw it in the back of the car in the trunk, and drive off, saying to themselves, "Well, hopefully we'll have better luck for the 4th of July."
I mean, if they even waited that long, they might have gone home early.
Exactly.
It was just a you had a month's worth of rain, and some parts of Long Island getting 4 to 5 inches of rain out of this. I mean, you literally had a month's worth of rain for 3 days, for over 72 hours. And I know everybody was complaining about the lack of rainfall, mainly because of the fact that I was up there last week, and I mentioned this a couple of times. The pollen was so bad that when you looked on the blacktop on the roadways, it was leaving, the tires were leaving streak marks like it does when, it first starts snowing. I mean, that was awful. And certainly the rain washed all of that away. So at least from that standpoint, the pollen sufferers are probably very happy. On the other hand, I drove back yesterday. I left at 1:30 in the morning on Sunday. I got here at 3 o'clock. It was my fastest drive back. It took me 13 hours and 30 minutes. And it was, it actually went the drive back went relatively quickly. I'm amazed. The last two, the drive up and the drive back, were the easiest drives I've ever had coming back to New York, or going up to New York and then coming back to Georgia. It was cloudy all the way down. I left early enough that I didn't see any of that heavy rain, of course. Like I had some light rain and drizzle until I got out of Virginia. And once I got into North Carolina, and I was on, I drive down 81, and then I 81 goes into Tennessee, and from there I get on 26. And 26 goes from Tennessee, eastern Tennessee, into western North Carolina. Once I cross the mountain range that lies right near the border of Tennessee and North Carolina, it broke out wide open. It was blue sky and sunshine. I got here yesterday. It was a beautiful afternoon, and today was absolutely gorgeous. By the way, we have a welcome to everybody that's on tonight on the chat board. I know it was a horrible weekend. I hope you found some good things to do in the rain. Mr. Ruben Fairchild says that it was a complete washout on Long Island, and he's livid. And my response to that is, how can you tell?
Well, some parts of Long Island, at the National Weather Service forecast office at Upton, they had 4.38 inches of rain, according to the rainfall totals. Nassau County, Lynbrook, 3.28 inches. So I guess you could say that, depending upon where you were on the island of Long, there were rainfall totals as much as 3 to 4 inches. A few spots had less. Levittown had 2.31, my old stomping grounds, and over in Suffolk, Kings Park at 2.34. So why don't we just say 2 to 4 inches for Long Island? I know up here in Putnam County, the few stations that that sent in reports averaged around 2.9 inches. We really did need the rain. I mean, I know we've been saying this over and over again. We really did need the moisture, the rainfall. I'll tell you what, with my grass, the only thing that was growing up until Friday were the clovers, those little tiny white flowers, which were popping up and dotting my lawn all over the place. And that drives me crazy. Over the span of the weekend, Saturday and Sunday into early today, you could literally see how much the grass sprouted up. And it was just like an hour or so ago, I finished mowing the lawn because it needed it. It didn't need it on Friday before all that rain, but after, about 3 inches worth, the grass certainly sopped it all up and took full advantage of growing after it. And now it looks like we're into a little bit of a dry spell for a little while. And by the way, and Joe, I don't know if you saw it on my Facebook page.
I did.
But I pointed out yesterday that for all the people who were bitterly complaining about how chilly and dank it was and how cold it was out there, sometimes you end up with more than you wish for. It's looking more and more like we're going to be heading for very warm, if not hot and humid weather for a protracted spell, beginning over the weekend and on through most, if not all, of next week. And all those people who were maybe complaining about how it's too hot or too humid or too sticky or whatever, because that's what's like what we're heading for in the days to come.
The biggest complaint should have been that the temperatures Saturday and Sunday were colder than they were on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day.
Right, absolutely. It's 59 on Christmas Eve, 61. In fact, many of you may remember we were coming off of that big 10-plus inch snowfall on the 16th and 17th of December. There was still a lot of that snow around at the start of Christmas Eve, but by Christmas morning, at least where I live up here, 98% of it was gone because of the sudden rise in temperatures into the upper 50s and lower 60s, and that got rid of the snow real quick. And here, this past weekend, we were having a tough time breaking 50. In fact, here in Putnam Valley, Joe, the high temperature on Saturday was 48, and I think we touched 50 briefly yesterday. Incredibly chilly weather, like 20, 25 degrees below normal.
By the way, David Schwartz posts on the chat board. He just said that my stay was relatively short. It was 9 days, which was not too shabby. But I have to just say this. It's a little off topic, but I just got to say this. How you people tolerate the roads the way they are. I mean, the Long Island Expressway, and Bill Uber texted me yesterday about how, I'm sorry, he texted me this today about the fact that there were so many cars that were pulled over because of the horrible conditions of the roads, particularly the Long Island Expressway, which is riddled, Joe. And I mean, it's worse than I have ever seen it. It is absolutely riddled with potholes from start to finish on both the westbound side and the eastbound side. I mean, for the amount of taxes that you pay and the tolls that you pay if you got to cross those bridges, those roads should be paved in gold, in my opinion, because they're awful. They're just awful.
I agree with you. Well, I have not been. It's been a while since I've been on Long Island, but many of the local TV stations, have done periodic reports about how terrible the roads are on Long Island, and I agree with you absolutely. These reports show you the condition of many of these roads, and when you consider the taxes that many of you who live on Long Island, especially in Nassau County, are shelling out, presumably in part for infrastructure and for road work and road repair, it's absolutely horrible what apparently you have to go through when you're traveling on those roads, at least of late.
Yeah, it was that to me was beyond comprehension. Uh, Absolutely beyond comprehension. All right. So anyway, enough of that. We are. I'm a little. I guess I'm a little subdued today, if only because of the fact that I did a 13 and a half hour drive yesterday. Uh, I, uh, I wound up actually staying up till about 10 o'clock last night, and I slept like a baby till about 8:15 this morning. So I'm I'm much better today, but I still, after tonight, I will be a bit more, how shall we say, up. And just as I said that, my computer screen decided to freeze on me, just as I was about to make a map change. All right, let's try it again. I unfroze it. Let's see if this will work. Oh, it's just lovely, isn't it? Yeah, okay. I wanted to bring this up. This is the NOAA's precipitation analysis of what fell. Now, what I did, the option for 3 days is not there. It's actually either one day and then it goes to 1 week. So, being that 99% of the rain in this area fell Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, it covers it. But you can see the big rainfall amounts. There were some 5 and 6 inch amounts totals in parts of east central New Jersey and southern Monmouth and northern Ocean counties. Large area, that lighter, I don't know what color that is, mauve, uh, in the 3 to 4 inch zone, 2 to 3 inches up the Hudson Valley, 2 to 3 inches in New York City, western Nassau. Then you got this patch of 4 to 5 in central Suffolk County, also in southeastern New England. Most of southeastern New England getting 3 to 4 inches, with a little band of 4 to 5 in northeast Connecticut and northern Rhode Island. The amounts were much less, but still an inch to an inch and a half once you go north of I-90 into upstate New York and northern Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine, and then back through Pennsylvania. It was basically about an inch and a half to maybe some spots in southwest PA that got 2 to 3 inches, and down into Maryland and into Virginia. And the amounts start to tail off a bit when you get into southeastern Virginia. Some of this was convectively driven also. The further south you go, you can see the uniform nature of the heavy rainfall amounts when you go over Maryland, Delaware, and in northeast Virginia, and then it gets more scattered as you go south into North Carolina. Eastern North Carolina dealing with some thunderstorms from time to time last week, while parts of the western part of North Carolina kind of missed out. Looked like maybe a little bit of a mountain shadow being having some impact here. So look, bottom line is that the rainfall was needed. Unfortunately, it did come on a holiday weekend where we haven't really had a holiday weekend since the pandemic. This is the first one since. So it's unfortunate because of the big impacts that it's having on not just on businesses, but of course people's psyche. But we'll work on for the next one when we head toward 4th of July, which you and I were talking about off camera, is on a Sunday this year. So that means most people will have the Monday off, and they'll probably take the Friday off. So it'll be a glorified 4-day weekend.
Yes, it will. And we had that sunshine today, but already you could see off to the west the first fingers of some probably high clouds, which are working their way toward toward the Hudson Valley, and a thicker layer that is off in the Ohio Valley that looks like will be making its way into our area later tonight or tomorrow. So I hope you all enjoy the brightness of the sky and the beautiful weather that we had for a few precious hours this afternoon, because I suspect, Joe, from looking at this satellite picture and the way the cloud cover is moving, that we may see or we may go back to a rather cloud-filled sky during the next 24 hours.
Yeah, a lot of that's blow off from all those thunderstorms that are going on in parts of western Texas. But yeah, at least the low in the Gulf of Maine pulled out, and you see the clearing skies that occur in the late afternoon. The weather was really nice up and down the East Coast down to Florida. I had a gorgeous day here. I'm even getting into some of that blow off cloudiness that is coming in from the northwest. By the way, in the time that I was away, there was one day last week, I believe it was Thursday, that they had some big thunderstorms here that knocked out the power for about 4 or 5 hours. But when I got back, most of the time it's been sunny here. But when I got back yesterday and I saw my plants, Joe, my tomato plant grew 2 feet in 1 week, and the greenery
Good
here.
Lord.
Yeah, I mean the greenery here. When I left, the trees obviously were all open, but when you're in the woods, the tops open first, and then the lower branches really take their time. Well, in 1 week, that all filled out, so it's down to the point where I cannot see any of my neighbors' homes. They're gone. Okay, so as far as I'm concerned, I'm in a completely secluded, wooded area. Izzy D is on the chat board tonight. He hasn't been on in a long time, and nice to see you on board, Izzy. I'm seeing your posts. I'm scrolling back on the chat. I don't know how you do these long drives or doing driving jobs. You do driving jobs sometimes, and I really get wiped out after 2 hours. Yeah, look, the reason why I did it the way I did it was because of the fact that there was nobody, absolutely nobody on the road. And leaving when I did on early Sunday morning at 1:30, because I took 78 across Jersey into Pennsylvania, and then it hooked up on I-81. And that's usually a very busy truck corridor. Well, there were no Mack trucks around. I think I saw maybe one or two. So it made the drive a whole lot easier. So if you're wondering why I leave early, that's why I leave early. Thank you for the super chat hit. Steve LeBoy, thank you so much for hitting super chat also tonight. Most appreciated. So, yeah, the weather going forward, we are going to see some changes. Obviously, we were not going to sit in an onshore flow with a trough along the East Coast and a southerly flow forever, thankfully. And now, of course, we're going to be transitioning over to June and some warmer weather, more humid weather, and in the long range, it could turn very warm. We'll get to that shortly. Storm Prediction Center tonight, mainly in southwest Texas, where you see marginal to slight risk for severe weather. We also have a marginal risk up in the Western Lakes and in a small area in southwest Florida under a marginal risk for severe weather. And as we take a look at tomorrow, just two small areas of marginal risk, again in southwest Texas and western New Mexico, and in northeast Texas, southwestern Arkansas, northwestern Louisiana, and a small portion of southeastern Oklahoma. And on Wednesday, marginal risk, a little finger of marginal risk from western Tennessee, west central Tennessee, northeastward through Kentucky, into a good chunk of the state of Ohio, and also again in New Mexico and in southwest Texas. And there's nothing on the day 4 to 8 time frame, but I'm thinking, Joe, Thursday with this cold front coming through, and it's not too shabby looking, an upper trough that's coming through either. I'm thinking maybe we'll probably see a marginal risk for severe weather by SPC tomorrow when we come into their range.
I think so. And you said that we're going to touch upon why we believe it's going to get very warm in the coming days ahead. I do, when you have a chance, if you share the screen, I'll bring up some maps that we had not brought up. At least I don't think you've ever brought up, and I've never really touched upon them. But I think that they will tell the tale and tell the story as to why the thinking is that we're going to be seeing some very warm, if not downright hot temperatures as we move toward the weekend and on into a good part of next week as well.
Yeah, the chairman is on tonight. He's not working anymore, and he hit super chat tonight too. Thank you, Scott. Most appreciated. With all the driving, I still haven't gotten to the meat of the my friend's book, Under the Weather, in which I am a primary character, and Scott says Mr. Chaffee, and in the book it's spelled Choffy. This way, it doesn't give me away. The character in the book, is he a good guy or a bad guy? Well, I don't know either, so we'll find out. I'll find out. I'm actually gonna do a little reading tonight before I hit the sack.
Are you a good witch or a bad witch?
Right. Exactly. And yeah.
I tell you, one time I was on the floor laughing for 5 minutes. One of the early specials that Robin Williams, the late great Robin Williams, had on HBO. He was just sitting on a bar stool, doing his routine for his audience, and he pulled out of his pocket. Remember when we were kids, Joe? We used to blow bubbles with the little, circular piece of plastic and blow on it.
Still have those.
All he did for about a minute was just blowing bubbles, and like people are starting to giggle and everything. And all of a sudden, he blew one bubble, which was gigantic. It must have been like 6 inches in diameter, and it's just hanging there floating. And all of a sudden, he gets off the chair, gets directly under the bubble, gets right under the bubble, and in that high-pitched sound, he says, "Are you a good witch
or a bad witch?" I'm not a witch at all. I'm Dorothy Gale. You juvenile delinquent.
We'll soon find out whether Mr. Chaffee is a good guy or a bad guy in this book.
Oh, good Lord. Well, you always, you knew my interpretation of the Wizard of Oz.
Right.
A juvenile delinquent.
A girl,
right.
Delinquent.
In a questionable in a questionable relationship with 3 older men. Okay. Kills a woman. Kills a woman for her shoes.
And then kills her again.
And then kills her again. Exactly. Kills the woman with her shoes and the one who wants the darn shoes. Oh, good Lord. All right. So let's.
And did anybody out there want the striped socks?
Oh, I know. The one that looks like a peppermint stick. I mean, a candy cane.
Exactly.
Candy cane. Okay, WPC. I was a little struck by this only because of the fact that this obviously, there's the only thing that's going on this week from the standpoint of showers and thunderstorms from what I looked at was that cold front for Thursday. And they're going 3/4 of an inch to an inch and a quarter. Now, obviously, when you dealing with convection, you can give yourself a wide range, and you can always get one thunderstorm that decides to sit on you and pummel you with about 2 or 3 inches in a short period of time. I don't know that that's going to happen, but I was a little surprised that they went as bullish as they did with the amounts, because there's not much else going on either side of Thursday. In the meantime, the rains in the Gulf states, while we're going to see, let's call it a gradual humidification of the atmosphere, especially across the southern states, we're going to see more chances for showers and thunderstorms here. I say here because I'm in North Georgia right now, but and here it's been bone dry much of the time, except for the odd day. I think when the one day last week when it stormed, that came after, say, 9 out of 10 days where you didn't see a drop of rain. So there will be better chances for showers and storms. And you can see WPC's got 3 to 6 inch plus rainfalls in central and east Texas into Louisiana, parts of Mississippi. Also in the Carolinas, some 3 to 5 inch rainfall amounts going on there in western North Carolina, and 1.5 inches or more across much of North Carolina out to the coast. Not much happening, though, once you go into the lakes, the northern and the central plains too, in terms of rainfall, but generally under a quarter of an inch, and in many areas under a tenth. And of course, the west, except in the Pacific Northwest corner, is going to be pretty dry. So I'm going to bring up let's bring up the upper air. We'll start with that because this is where we're going in the long range. And you touched on this, Joe, with regards to the changes that are going on in the eastern part of the United States. You know, it looks like we are going to get into a ridge position, which is going to get interrupted briefly by a trough late this week, and then we're going to get back into a ridge position again for the weekend and into next week. So it's always, depending on the position of the ridge, is going to determine, how warm is it going to get. And in the first instance, the ridge is going to be too far east. In the second instance, it's going to be a little bit further to the west, which is going to be favorable to bring the temperatures up. I just wanted to back up also to what happened this weekend when we had this lagging trough, and we talked about how the upper trough was going to try to come through. The bottom part of the trough that you see here on Saturday just kind of stretched its way down into the Ohio Valley and the Appalachians, and gradually an upper low forms here, and that created a southerly flow along the East Coast. So that we wound up dealing with two waves that brought rain Friday night into Saturday, and then that second wave that brought the heavy rain for Sunday, that was with the upper low as it lifted up to the northeast. Now that's gotten kicked out, and we're getting a little bit of bridging here into the middle part of the week, but because the upper high is out in the Atlantic, so the high being offshore means that we're probably going to have more of a south wind as opposed to, say, a west wind. So that's going to put a cap on how high temperatures get for, say, Wednesday and Thursday. In the meantime, there's the next trough that's coming eastward, and that will trigger off, with a cold front, is going to trigger off the chance for thunderstorms as it goes by. And then once that goes by, as the maps slowly load, that whole trough, instead this time around, Joe, the bottom part of that trough is not going to tail off and get left behind. And now we've got another ridge that builds over the weekend. The upper high this time is centered over North and South Carolina, with the ridge built back up into the western lakes. So that bodes well for warmer temperatures, very warm temperatures this coming weekend and into the first part of next week. And the other thing I would say is, with the position of this ridge and those westerly winds retreating up into southern Canada or even a little bit further north than that, I don't see any kind of backdoor front issues for the weekend and into next week. At least not right now.
Right. Now, on the same vein as what you just mentioned about the building ridge, let me see if I could, I could. I'm going to share my screen here and show you folks something which I've been looking at. Again, in the same vein of what Joe has been talking about. And this is from NOAA, the Weather Prediction Center. And these are GFS 500 millibar height anomaly forecasts. In other words, the higher or stronger the ridge, the greater the height numbers on these maps. And you will see what we're talking about and why we're so confident that we're going to be underneath an area of high pressure for a good number of days after we get this final trough booted out of here in a few days. Once we get that out, we're just going to see this ridge expand over us. Now, the first map that you see here is the 3-day anomaly. So this takes us to Thursday. And notice, if you will, that the ridge, the high pressure ridge, is building over areas around Newfoundland and just off to the east of Nova Scotia. This is where that ridge is most intense by 3 days from now. Now let's take a look at the map for day 5. This is again for North America. And you can see now, this is by the end of the week or the start of the upcoming weekend, we have high pressure apparently strengthening or ridging all across the country. from the West Coast up to the Great Lakes and down into the Northeast and the Maritime provinces. This shows you a value of 100. But now, watch this, Joe. The 8-day outlook. This is again the 8-day mean based upon the GFS model. This was really impressive to me. Take a look at this. This shows that 8 days. This would be Monday or Tuesday of next week. Look at this. From a maximum value building up of the heights of 100, we now have by early next week the buildup of 200 here in northern New England. And look how large and expansive this area of high pressure is indicated to be. This is a tremendous ridge, or tremendous dome, if you will, of upper level high pressure. And that tells me that we are most definitely going to be not just in a dry weather pattern for the most part, but probably also a warm to hot weather pattern for the most part as well, with I could see well into the 80s, even some low, maybe even mid 90s. I'll tell you, the hottest areas may not necessarily be in the Virginias or the Carolinas. The hottest area may be in upstate New York and into New England if this actually pans out. So we're looking at, again, a buildup of high pressure and an indication of some really hot temperatures. This is day 11 now. This is for not the middle part of this week, but the middle part of next week. I mean, we're talking about maybe around the 10th or 11th of June, and now we have the heights dropping back. The height anomaly is dropping back to about a plus 125, but still a very large area that is going to be in full control of the eastern part of the country. Again, from the end of this week, probably right on through the weekend and right on into a good part of next week as well. And look at this out here, south of Alaska, in the northern sections of the Pacific here, another batch of building high pressure. So you could see that from what I could see, Joe, we're looking at a spell of dry and increasingly hot weather coming our way for later in the week, the weekend, and on into a good part of next week.
Okay, so two questions from Bill Rogers. One is, can you explain what heights mean? And the second part of that question is this different than a Bermuda high scenario?
Well, just going to the second question first.
I knew you would
actually,
do that.
If you look at the the surface feature does show a Bermuda high of sorts, or at least a subtropical high. And you were saying, Joe, about southerly or southwesterly winds.
Right.
It looks like we're going to be in a southerly. Now, I have a question for you before we go to the first question, which is, does this imply what you sometimes refer to, or what we used to refer to when you were on Pix 11 as tropical skies?
Well, yeah. When you have a Bermuda high setup, but you usually see that more when you get really deep into, say, August and early September, where you have a high. If you have a high with a south wind or even a southeast wind, and you get those deep blue skies, and the big puffy cumulus, and you wind up with a sea breeze front. It looks almost like Florida does. So yeah. I mean, that's it's kind of like, it's kind of like that, but I just think it's a little bit too early for the true Florida feel. Yeah, because it'll still be, this time of year you get a setup like that with the ocean still relatively cold. You talk about inland temperatures that have a tough time getting to 80, and it's in the 60s and 70s along the coast. But then when you get into August, where the water temperatures are up into the 70s, then that really doesn't have much of an impact, and there's not really that much of a sea breeze. Just want to acknowledge a couple of things here before you get to Bill's second question about the explaining the height. So Johnny Quest hitting super chat tonight. Izzy D hitting super chat again, and mentioning about the fact that I should stop off at a Central New Jersey library on my next drive down and give a library talk. I have reached out a number of times to those libraries, and none of them seem to be interested. So you got to get them to call me. And I have to tell you, quite honestly, I mean, I'm going to be up I'm going to be up in the New York area relatively infrequently over the next several months. Actually, I won't be up at all, probably not until maybe September, because that's the next time I got to get my teeth cleaned. So, so I'm still going to my same dentist. But yeah, those libraries need to reach out, because I've tried, I have, and they weren't too interested. So that's the way the ball bounces. Um, anyway,
The way I approached it. Yeah, you were the one who actually turned me on to library talks, and I think I spent a solid week, doing nothing, 8 hours a day, but going through all the libraries in the tri-state area, typing in email addresses. I got something like 600 plus email addresses, and then I created kind of a package, if you will, of different prospectus is what I called it, a program prospectus of different talks that I could offer to the libraries. And I had given library talks in the winter during December, and I went to some of those libraries and said, "Would you do me a favor and write like a letter of recommendation?" And a couple of them wrote some very nice letters for me, saying, "If you hire Joe Ray."
uh-oh, we've come to a halt here. Hold on, just took an internet hit.
Mailing 600 emails going out. Now, out of 600, I got maybe maybe a 5% comeback. So I mean, like, the vast majority of those emails came and went, but the numbers that I ended up with certainly have gone a long way with all of these talks I'm giving now and going into the summer season. But I never would have gotten into this if you hadn't turned me on to library talk. So, Joe, thanks for
Oh, not at
letting me know
all.
about this.
Not at all.
I didn't even know
Yeah, but
about
you
this.
know what?
Now, as far as what Bill,
The virtual stuff is going to stop. So they're going to make you want to make personal appearances.
that's
So you're
true.
not going to be able to do like 8 in one day. So
That's true to a degree. But if I maybe expand this and go into other areas, like, for example, one of these talks I'm giving is in Providence, Rhode Island. I know that the Providence, Rhode Island Library did not expect me to make an on-camera or in-person appearance. But
right.
I think if I could get other libraries from other states involved, even I'll go as far west as Washington and Oregon, as long as I think these libraries want somebody to provide them with a reasonably good hour of informative and entertaining stuff. But we'll see. Well, that's something to explore in the future. But what Bill Rogers asked about, what are heights when we talk about higher than normal heights? Upper air, excuse me, upper air weather maps offer um, differ from surface weather maps. We see on surface weather maps isobars, for example, which help to delineate various air masses and weather fronts. Surface weather conditions are plotted on a map of constant altitude, preferably sea level. Everything is reduced to atmospheric sea level pressure. But upper air weather conditions are plotted on maps of constant air pressure, and the altitude on which the particular pressure is located is reported on these maps. So a specific air pressure at a specific height, and it's usually in meters, or we call them decameters, actually. That is what is plotted on these upper air maps. The 500 millibar maps, this 850 millibar maps, the 200 millibar. And when I'm talking about rising heights, I'm talking about air pressure, high pressure systems in the upper level of the atmosphere that are literally expanding like a balloon. The heights are rising until you literally see on these maps what in essence is a mountain of atmospheric air pressure in the higher levels of the atmosphere. And that's what we're looking at for next week. We're looking at building high pressure in the upper levels of the atmosphere, which tends to lead to periods of warm, if not downright hot weather, like typically in the summertime, June, July, August. When you look at an upper air map and you see on the 500 millibar map, when you see heights, high pressure heights on the order of, let's say, 588 to 594 decameters, that tells you that it's going to be hot. And sometimes on rare occasions when we see, temperatures approaching the high 90s or even low hundreds in this part of the country. We're talking about air pressure heights of like close to 600. We're not going to see that next week, but we are going to see much higher heights as opposed to what we were seeing over the weekend and at the start of this week with that troughiness. No troughs next week, just lots of high pressure and lots of very warm to hot air building into our part of the country, which also is spelling out, Joe, as you mentioned, no back doors, no cutoff lows, no storms of any nature that could bring prolonged or protracted rain. In fact, the best that you could hope for, I think, next week is one of those scenarios, and if it's a southerly wind, we probably will have higher dew point temperatures, unfortunately. So what we might be looking at next week is maybe perhaps isolated pop-up convection in the afternoon and early evening hours, but nothing organized, nothing suggesting any, long-lasting rainfall, just a few hit or miss showers and storms in what overall will be a hot, humid, and rather hazy type of weather pattern for next week.
No, and if you follow the height lines, just like if you follow the isobars, you know where the upper winds are. So if you just follow the height lines, and I'm just drawing over one of them right now, that tells you, the flow of the wind in the upper atmosphere. The tighter those lines are together, the stronger the winds are. And of course, your upper high, and I pulled up the map for Wednesday night. You can see the upper high is sitting literally right over Bermuda. So this is kind of like a Bermuda high in a sense. But in the summertime, you're talking about a Bermuda high usually is so strong that, these height lines that you see in the southeastern part of the United States, like the one running up eastern North Carolina and off the Virginia and the New Jersey coast, those height lines will be pushed all the way up into Canada. And in fact, when we look at the upper air in the longer range going into next week, that's exactly what we're seeing. We're seeing that upper high, pushing all the way up. But the ridge axis is further west. We showed you on the map that upper high is going to be actually sitting in over North and South Carolina, and the ridge is going to be pushed up into the western part of the Great Lakes. So that is a scenario where you don't have a south wind at the surface, but you have more of a southwest or even a west-southwest wind, and that's going to allow things to warm up. Before I continue, just want to address one other thing that Bill Rogers mentioned about the fact he's very concerned, Joe, that I don't eat enough fruit, apparently. And I just want to allay that concern. I'm not big on eating whole fruits. I mean, I do love summer fruits. I love nectarines and cherries and peaches. But I'm not big on apples and pears and all and those kind of fruits. But I do have not every day, but every other day at least. I make a smoothie using pomegranate juice, bananas, blueberries, and strawberries. So I'm getting and I use a fair amount of them. So I get my fruits mashed up in the blender and made into a smoothie. So I just don't want you to worry too much that I'm not getting proper nutrition, because I am. So
I remember those commercials when Jack LaLanne was alive with his wife. He was trying to sell some kind of a machine, which basically was a grinder. He would throw in like broccoli spears, carrots, any kind of vegetable, and the thing would it would take that and it would make it into a juice, and he called it the Jack LaLanne juice.
I made a long time ago, because somebody gave us a juicer that they were going to throw out, and I made a broccoli, like a vegetable one, and it was no. You have to have a certain amount of a certain constitution to be able to take that, and that was just very simply not for me. I'm a good veggie eater, by the way, just to be clear. So I just want to get to Thursday, because that's our next chance here for any kind of thunderstorms, and that's going to be dealing with this shortwave trough that is coming out to the east. That we get a minor interruption of the ridge that's off the east coast as that trough moves eastward, and that particular shortwave swings east. It's not the most impressive shortwave in the world. It's kind of broad, but I think it might be enough. There's certainly enough to trigger off maybe a broken line of storms to come through later Thursday or Thursday night, and maybe that there could be the odd severe cell in there. But you'll notice as we move through Friday and the weekend how that trough lifts out, and then you get that big upper high that forms in the Carolinas on Sunday, and then the ridge actually reinforces itself over New England, New York State, Pennsylvania, and into the Western Lakes for Monday into Tuesday. So this is where and it even goes further west than that when we move into Tuesday. The upper high is actually centered over Lake Michigan. There's one off the East Coast and another one centered over Michigan. So this is where we're going to have to start to look at what's the surface wind going to be. If it's more of a west wind, that's going to actually help to boost temperatures up considerably. I was looking at the digital forecast for the weekend, Joe, and they all have, mostly low and mid 80s for Saturday and middle and even a few upper 80s for Sunday, which I think kind of makes sense with what we're dealing with. So as far as what the surface generates, now I kind of left out for now for Wednesday. I mean, I suppose that there could be some scattered showers and storms well inland Wednesday in Pennsylvania and parts of upstate New York. The GFS does show that. The NAM really didn't show all that much. And I don't know, a lot of times when you have a south wind, it usually means that those storms never really have much impact unless you're well inland and well north and west, which is what the GFS is indicating here. And then, of course, on Thursday with this stronger front and shortwave, you see that the GFS is pretty bullish with showers and storms late Thursday afternoon and Thursday evening. And then, of course, still lingering a few around on Friday for some reason. I'm not 100% sure why. Probably, they still have to wait for the upper trough to go by. But then after that, we've got the high out in the Atlantic that starts to build back westward, and there's no sign of any cold front coming anywhere close. I'm looking for a back door. I see a little backdoor front next Tuesday approaching upstate New York. I mean, way up in upstate New York. And then it just kind of falls apart. There's a hint of it there on Wednesday across upstate New York and into New England, but we have a west wind here. So I would probably say, based on this, that next Tuesday is kind of questionable, but Wednesday from temperatures. But Wednesday might be the day that you wind up getting up to 90. Next Wednesday and Thursday. I'm just looking at just off the top of my head here on the new GFS, but no real front indicated until looks like there's one for Saturday, June 12th. Looks like some kind of cold front, maybe not this weekend, but the following weekend. So you got a pretty good stretch here that's going to last about 10 or 11 days of warmer temperatures coming for sure.
And you mentioned, of course, not this Wednesday, but next Wednesday and Thursday, and of course, Thursday morning of next week is the solar eclipse. And I've been telling people about the eclipse, but I've been telling them also that if I had my druthers, that the best kind of weather I would like to see for that eclipse is the kind of weather where we have a lot of haze or smaze, if you will, settling down in the early morning hours, so that when the sun comes up that morning, it comes up so that you could actually look at it for a longer period of time directly with your eye. We've all done that before. And the haze helping to attenuate both the visible and also the ultraviolet rays. You'd have to worry about the infrared, but you'd have to look a long time or stare a long time to worry about that building up on your eyeballs. But we've all seen at one time or another the sun coming up or going down like a big red ball in the west, or sometimes even looking like a maraschino cherry. But to get that, you need a spell of heat and haze and humidity, and it looks like that may very well be the story for the weather for next week. So hopefully that will work in our favor. The one thing I am concerned about, because I'm planning to watch it from a coastal area right along the shore, and the one thing I am concerned about in that type of pattern also is fog. You don't want to have a thick blanket of fog covering you up, because that'll kill everything. So we'll see, but
Yeah,
it looks like that's the
usually,
kind of
but
weather
that
we're looking
that
at.
usually is something you see more when you get into August, the latter part of August and September, where you get that morning fog. You don't really see it too often this time of year. So I think I'm looking at the map. I got up the map for next Thursday morning, Joe. And the other thing that kind of helps your cause, I think, is the fact that you do have a couple of isobars there, a couple of westerly isobars, so that at least will move the air along. So perhaps
Yeah.
you won't have.
Let's
Yeah, I mean, we're sitting here
we'll
talking.
see.
We're here
It's
sitting
still
here
10
trying to
days out.
forecast fog for 10 days out. It's a little tough.
Well, and also, aren't I contradicting myself? Week after week on this forum, I said, you're trying to forecast what it's going to be like 10 days from now. These models, sometimes you can't even predict what's going to happen 5 days or 4 days from now. And here I am, because again, like somebody who may have a wedding or a big outdoor party schedule, they start asking these questions. And, now I'm asking the questions as what it's going to be like for the morning of the eclipse, which I've been promoting for weeks now. But so right now, with guarded optimism, I say, yeah, it looks pretty much like we at least, there's no sign of any major storms or anything. We're just going to have to play it out and see how it all works out for next week. But it looks like it's going to be a rather warm and sultry weather pattern shaping up for much of next week. I also wanted to mention to Bill Rogers on the chat board, saying he never heard of the term decameter. And he said you learn something every day. Bill and everybody else, at the 500 millibar level, we know that generally speaking, that's 18,000 feet above sea level, okay? So I'm putting in my little calculator right now, 18,000. Now, how many inches are in 18,000 feet? So you multiply that by 12, and you come up with 216,000 inches. But we are talking about metric. We're talking about meters. How many meters are in 216,000 inches? 1 meter is equivalent to 39.37 inches. So divide 216,000 by 39.37, and you get 5,486.4 meters. But we don't see that on a weather map, on an upper level weather map. We see decameters. A decameter is every 10 meters. So if
Right,
we
Deca
divide
is
that
10.
5,486.4, divide that by 10, what do you come up with? 548.6. So there you go. There's the number in the 500s that you see on an upper level 500 millibar map. That's how we get those 500 heights. They again, those are in decameters, and that's how we calculate decameters.
Yeah,
Voila. And the
exactly.
higher up, and where the pressure is higher, so are the heights, and so the higher the heights, the higher the pressure, and that's why when we talk about what we're talking about next week with heights of 588 or 590 decameters, we're talking about a big ridge or big dome of high pressure that is building in our section of the country. Voila.
Right. So 588 on the map actually means 5,880 meters. So
Correct.
deca means
Correct.
10. So yeah,
Right.
just to deca, decade. Okay.
Right.
Tropical storm Blanca has formed in the Pacific, and we usually don't care too much about these fish storms unless they are threatening Mexico or Baja California, for example, or sometimes you get the moisture from these things to run up northeastward up into Texas. And Blanca is way out in the open waters. Top winds are 45 miles an hour. I'm just going to just really quick put up their forecast, which is to keep it as a tropical storm for the next day or two, and then once it gets west of 115 west and north of 16 or 17 degrees north, you weaken it to a depression, and then it goes goodbye. And this is typical of storms in the early part of the season, from May into July. Usually, the Pacific is winds up being on the busy side relative to the Atlantic, but almost always these storms are way out. And the Hurricane Center did also have a little X there, way out further east of Blanca, and they only show, say, the significant development of that particular system is not expected. Tomorrow is the official start of hurricane season, and I didn't get a chance to do it today, but we can maybe take a look in the coming days over some of the at some of the factors that are going to be impacting the kind of season the Atlantic is going to have. And I think the fact that we still have below average temperatures in the equatorial Pacific, the waning La Nina suggests that it's going to be probably a more an active season above average. 14 is the new average for tropical storms in the Atlantic, with 7 hurricanes and 3 majors, up from 12, 6, and 12 and 6. The 3 majors part remains the same when they took the new 30-year means into account. And June oftentimes is in the Atlantic. Sometimes you can get tropical storms that produce big rains. Every once in a while you get a hurricane. Every once in a while you'll get a landfalling hurricane, usually something in the Gulf of Mexico, for example, or something coming out of the Northwest Caribbean. Climatologically speaking, that would be the place you would look during the month of June for something to develop. At the moment, on the Atlantic side, things are pretty quiet. And I think if we I punch up their outlook map real quick, you'll see no tropical cyclones expected for the next 48 hours, nor for the next 5 days. And of course, we just had Anna this month, because we're still in May. For some reason today, I thought it was June 1st. But you and I talked about this last week. To me, that was the kind of tropical system that they never would have named back in the day when they didn't have the satellites. Right. And I just, I don't know, whatever their criteria is, that's their job. So I don't want to sound like I'm being critical here, but I'm just stating the fact that if this were 20 years ago, 30 years ago, or more, that storm would probably never have gotten a name out of it.
I would not like to ask any of the forecasters. If I had any of the hurricane forecasters from Coral Gables sitting in front of me, I would not want to ask them, because they're younger than you and I, Joe. I mean, they probably are in their 30s or 40s. What I'd like to be able to do, though, is to ask somebody like Neil Frank, who was the head of the National Hurricane Center back in the 80s. This goes back now 4 decades ago. Somebody of that caliber who dealt with hurricanes and tropical systems, if he felt like we do, that would they have categorized tropical systems, the ones that we're seeing now, as hurricanes back in the day, as opposed to now, where they have brand new technology, a much higher and better performing satellite, GOES 16, which they're now, every little thing they're looking at and they're saying, oh, that could be a tropical system. We'll make that a wave, or we'll make that a subtropical storm. And again, back in the day, we just didn't see this. We didn't have this. And again, as you mentioned, I would strongly wonder whether Anna last week would really have been a tropical system back, 30 or 40 years ago, or whether or not it just would have gone as a swirling area of low pressure that no, it was not quite there. It didn't quite make it, so to speak.
Right.
It's a whole new world and a whole new bit of technology, and the people who are behind it, who are studying it now, it's different than again many years ago.
All right, so let's do a little Briller Jeopardy tonight, Mr. Rayo, and tonight we are doing the debut years of certain television shows. You need to get it to within 2 years to get credit for this, and if, of course, you do succeed in getting all the shows, you will win a gift certificate from the Spiegel Catalog Company, Spiegel, Chicago, Illinois, 60609.
60609.
Although Scott wanted to give you one from the Sears Catalog of Chicago, Illinois, 600.
Are they still in business?
60018. No, they aren't. No.
Before we get into the Briller Jeopardy, there are a number of people, and Dennis Cassia mentions it on the chat board, about watching the eclipse, and some people saying, can I use sunglasses? And I mentioned this last week. The fact is that the sun puts out a tremendous amount of light, 400 times brighter than the full moon, not just visible light, but also infrared and ultraviolet radiation. So what you need is, if you want to look at it directly, you need a filter that will knock out all 3, not just one. Sunglasses. The sunglasses may knock out the visible rays of the sun, but may still allow the ultraviolet and infrared rays, the burning rays, to come through those sunglasses and burn your retina without you even knowing it. You say to yourself, everything's looking good, and then later on you see a little blank spot on your eye, like you have macular degeneration. So you need a filtration device that will allow you to look safely and knock off not just the visible, but all three different wavelengths, the ultraviolet, the infrared, and the visible. And for that, you need to get either these Eclipse glasses, which are available either on Amazon, or there's a company out in California called Rainbow Symphony. They've been selling glasses for over 30 years, and they are perfectly safe. If you can find a hardware store that sells welder's glass, not just any welder's glass, you need either number 13 or number 14 welder's glass. The only thing about welder's glass is when you look at the sun through welder's glass, it turns the sun a green color. But if you don't mind that, that is also perfectly safe. Or if you have mylar, a plastic, metallized plastic, and in fact, I could tell you where you can get mylar. Is the companies that sell space blankets, where if you're a camper, you wrap yourself up in mylar at night. And if you can get a hold of mylar plastic, several sheets of mylar, several thicknesses, will be safe for you to look at a solar eclipse. Now, do not use sunglasses, do not use smoke glass, do not use old negatives, color negatives. Although who the heck goes to a drugstore and gets negatives
Keith
film now
James,
anymore?
on that note, Joe, Keith James II says he's an amateur photographer. Should he not try and photograph the eclipse? Could he damage his eyes trying to photograph it?
If you have the filters which I just mentioned, either mylar or welder's glass, or maybe the plastic, the polymer glass or plastic that is used in those eclipse glasses, and you put them in front of your camera lens, yes, you can use those filters for filming the partial eclipse. Do not use, for visual purposes, what the photographers sometimes use called neutral density filters, because they let the IR and the UV rays right straight on through, unabated. So you cannot use photographic filters for visual purposes to look at the sun. You have to get those special glasses, which again can be obtained on Amazon, or the worst case scenario would be a space blanket cut into several sections, several thicknesses of that. Or if you can find a hardware store that sells welder's glass, number 13 or number 14 will do the trick for that. We'll talk more about that as we get closer, I'm sure, to the eclipse late next week.
Okay,
now, Driller Jeopardy.
Well, yeah, hang on one second. Tim wanted me to show the radar right now across the U.S., and I've got, this is Tornado HQ, and I'll just put the terrain background on it. And you can see that there's rain, and so still some heavy rain going on in eastern Maine and into New Brunswick on the radar. So I know you're up in that area. So they're also still seeing some showers, a couple of heavier showers up in northern New Hampshire. The East Coast is fine. Some storms over the Florida Keys. You can see the storms going on across much of Texas. We actually have one working tornado warning down near the Mexico border, north and west of Del Rio at the moment. This is as of 8:35 p.m. Eastern Time. Some showers in and around Chicago, also up in the northern lakes where we have that marginal risk up in parts of central Wisconsin. Some storms going on there, north of Green Bay. Some scattered showers and storms southeastern Colorado down into New Mexico. Nothing else going on up in the northern Rockies or in the western part of the U.S. So that was as of 8:35 Eastern Time. If you are following severe weather, watching this on a replay, be sure to go to weather.gov for the latest weather information and the latest radars regarding the severe weather that could be occurring in your area. So here we go. So Briller Jeopardy tonight, the debut years of the following programs. Okay, starting with Leave It to Beaver.
I will say, I know Leave It to Beaver went off the air, I think in the early 60s, like 62, 63, but they were on for like 7 years. I'm going to say 1957.
And the answer is 1957. You hit it on the nose. Very good. How about the Jetsons?
Yeah. Jetsons came after the Flintstones. The Flintstones were in 60, and then Hanna-Barbera had a lot of success with them, and they said, well, why don't we try a space-age version of the Flintstones? I think that came a year or two later. I'm going to say 1962.
And the answer is 1962. No,
lovely.
Very good. Two on the nose. Hogan's Heroes.
1960. I don't think they ever were in black and white, so they had to come after 65 because CBS went color in 66. I'm going to say 1966. No, wait a minute. 66 or 67? One half of me says 66. The other says 67. I will say 67. 1967.
Well, Joe, as it turns out, either choice would have been correct because Hogan's Heroes debuted in 1965.
Oh, okay.
You are 1/3 of the.
Gee, so they didn't.
You're 1/3 of the way to that gift certificate from either the Sears or the Spiegel Catalog Company. Number 4, and I believe I read this weekend that Gavin Macleod of the Mary Tyler Moore Show, because that's where I know him from, and in a few other appearances in other sitcoms and other shows, including, by the way, an episode of Perry Mason, where I believe he played.
Yes.
I believe he was the killer. The date he passed away this weekend. Love Boat, the debut year of the Love Boat. I could proudly say I've never seen a complete episode of the Love Boat. I think I watched 5 minutes of it once and I was just like, this is not for me. The Love Boat.
I will say 1975.
Well, Joe, that puts you again inside that 2-year window that you have, 1977. So you've gotten 4 out of 4. Okay, now number 5. I feel like Frank Nelson in the episode where Lucy was trying to win the trip to Hawaii, and every time that Ricky got the song, correct to move them along, when he would bring,
Omaha, Nebraska.
Right, he would ring the the Mariners bell and name the city. That's what I'm feeling like tonight.
Right.
All right, number 5 is The Outer Limits.
Oh, The Outer Limits. Well,
which was ABC's answer to The Twilight Zone, by the way.
Right.
And it was also, they also tried it with a show before that was called One Step Beyond.
I'm going to say 1962 for The Outer Limits.
1963. You are now halfway there to your gift certificate. So now,
do not adjust your TV sets.
Right.
We are in control.
Our sixth show on the list. There's a little hotel called the Shady Rest at the Junction. It is run by Kate. Come and see her place at the Junction.
All right.
And that's Uncle Joe. He's a moving kind of slow at the Junction. Had to go Junction.
I'm tempted to say either 62 or 63. I will say 62.
63 is the answer, and you are again within 2. So you are now 6 for 6 and just 4 shows away from that gift certificate. Number 7 is Love American Style.
Let me just say before we move on to the next one, there was an episode, I think it was in 1969. This was after B. Benaderet passed away, sadly, and they brought in June Lockhart to play the women's role as the motherly whoever. I think she and you're into flowers, Joe. Isn't there a flower called Janet Craig?
I believe so.
I think there's a flower called, and that's the role that she played on Petticoat Junction. She was Dr. Janet Craig. Anyway, getting off of the subject, I think it was in 1969. There was an episode where Laurie Saunders, who played Billy Joe, the brunette of the three Bradley sisters. She had this boyfriend who was like a deputy sheriff, and they were having some sort of beauty contest, and all of the contestants had to wear a swimsuit. And in this one episode, Laurie Saunders came out in a white one-piece swimsuit. And when I saw that episode, Joe, I was like maybe how old was I? I was 13
You
years
were
old.
in love.
I suddenly discovered women. That white one-piece, that one episode is tattooed on my brain. I never really watched Petticoat Junction, but I can tell you that was one episode that made an exceedingly strong impression on me.
Yes.
Laurie Saunders. I think she was like the second or third woman to play that particular Bradley sister, with the exception of Betty Jo, who was played by Linda Kay Henning, who was one of the writers on Petticoat Junction. The other two sisters were played by multiple women. One of the Billy Joe, not Billy Joel. Billy Joe was played by Meredith McRae, who was also exceedingly attractive. But that one episode with Laurie Saunders in the white swimsuit, I'll never forget that.
Yes. Well, let's move on to Love American Style.
Love, love, love.
An ABC production.
It's either, I'll say 1970.
69. So you missed it by one, but
69.
you are now 7 for 7. Okay, number 8, Green Acres.
Green Acres was 1965.
That is correct. Hazel.
Hazel. Who's the gal with everybody's pal?
It's Hazel. Da, 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 da.
Da, 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 da.
Da, da, da,
Hazel.
Da, 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 da.
Very unusual with Hazel. Hazel's first episode, the pilot episode, was broadcast in color, and then she went to black and white for about a year or two before they came
back to color, yeah,
full time.
Because they didn't want to spend the money at the time.
Right. So I'd say, I'll say 62.
1961. And by the way, I should mention, Shirley Booth is one of the few actors or actresses to achieve the rare triple, having won an Oscar for Best Actress in Comeback Little Sheba in I want to say 1951 or 52, one of those years, for Comeback Little Sheba, a Tony Award and for Hello Dolly, and also a couple of Emmys for Hazel. So I mean, she didn't do many movies. I only think she only did a handful of movies. She was much more a stage actress than anything else, but she was exceptional. And when you see her in Hazel, particularly in the early episodes, that was a great role for her. That was a great part.
It was. Oh, Mr. B,
yes.
Mr. B, and there's a sad story about Hazel, in that if you were a fan of the show, you may remember Sport.
Yeah, Billy Buntrock.
That was Mr. and Mr. Baxter, Billy Buntrock, and you know that Billy Buntrock sadly was killed. He was on like a motorbike or a moped or something, and he had an accident with it. He was only like 17 or 18 years old, and he was killed at a very, very young age. This came after Hazel had gone off the air. And if you also remember, Hazel transitioned from Channel 4, NBC, to Channel 2.
CBS.
And CBS. And Don DeFore, who played the role of Mr. Baxter, and his wife, Whitney Blake, whose daughter was Meredith Baxter, they were not told. They had to learn through the trades that Hazel was canceled, and that, not canceled, but they learned that they were pushed off because they were apparently too old. And Hazel moved in with the Baxters, George Baxter's younger brother,
Ray Fuller, played by Ray Fuller,
and Ray Fuller, and of course younger wife,
and Lynn Borden,
and they had a daughter.
The
So right, and they had a daughter, Lynn, which eventually became, intermingled with Bobby Buntrock, not his brother and sister, but I guess as
As
cousins or whatever. But in any case, Hazel moved the channel too with that on that whole new premise, and they more or less just like booted out Don DeFore and Whitney Blake, and Don DeFore never forgave NBC for that. So
yeah, there was that was a money issue when they moved them over to CBS.
Yeah.
Apparently. So I was reading about that. Okay, the last show on the list, Joe, is number 10, Little House on the Prairie.
Which I believe started in I'm tempted to say 71. I think it was either 71 or 72. I will say 1971.
That, unfortunately, Joe, you just missed it by one, so you don't get the gift certificate from the famous Spiegel Catalog Company, Spiegel, Chicago, Illinois, 60609.
What year was it? 74?
74.
74!
Right.
Darn it!
I know. You did, but you got 9 out of 10.
Damn you, Michael! Damn you, Michael Landon!
Oh, God.
I'm not ashamed. I'm not ashamed to say this. I'm not ashamed. No, but I'm not ashamed to say this. I was a fan of Little House on the Prairie, and the episode where Jack died. Jack was the faithful dog.
Mm-hmm.
The episode where Half Pint Melissa
Gilbert.
Who played Melissa Gilbert. When she goes into the barn and she's yelling at the dog because she has to remove some burrs that were on his fur. Ma Ingalls told her, "Go into the barn right now and get." I don't want to do it. And she goes in and the dog is dead, and she realizes that the dog has died. Jack has died, and she called Pa, and Joe, you couldn't for half an hour. I was like, so.
I remember watching some episodes of Little House.
Yeah.
I'll just leave it at that. I don't.
All right.
I don't have any. Nothing really comes to mind other than the adopted daughter of the couple that owned the general store. That was like a troublemaker.
Oh, that's later on in the series.
Yeah.
Because the actual daughter Nellie, I guess left because she didn't want to play that role anymore, or maybe she was asking for too much money, whatever. So they realized they had to get somebody to replace Nellie. And you're right, the girl who they adopted was like really a nasty little. In fact, we learned to hate Nellie when Nellie came back for an episode while this other girl was on the show. You hated the other girl and you were rooting for Nellie.
Right. Well, I think when she came back as a grown-up, nicer character.
Correct. And they were actually, Melissa Gilbert's character, they were always sniping at each other, but when she came back as an older, more refined, mature young lady, they were like the best of friends. But the girl who was adopted to take her place, she was a nasty little, well, you get the idea.
Yeah. Well, that was fun. All right, so I guess we made up a little.
Now we have a
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, we have a scheduling problem for this week. Is I have library talks all of this week, but they are all at 7 p.m., which means that we could probably start at 8:30.
Fine by me.
Except there's one library, however, that does not start at 7 p.m. They start at 7:30. That's the Bethpage Library, and that's tomorrow night. So my question to you is:
9 o'clock.
A, do you want to go solo, or do you want to go B, 9 o'clock?
Well, if you're up to it, 9 o'clock. If you're not up to it, let me know and I'll go earlier. But I'd rather go.
No.
I'd rather do it with you. So let's do. I mean, I'm okay with 9 o'clock.
So 9 o'clock tomorrow night, and then for the rest of the week, 8:30. Unless we don't have a show on Friday. So 9 o'clock tomorrow night and 8:30 for Tuesday for Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Wednesday and Thursday.
Sounds good to me. All right, so 9 tomorrow, 8:30 Wednesday, 8:30 Thursday. Gotcha. All right.
Right.
So I hope everybody
7:30 Central Time.
right. Boom boom. Oh, I started the whole boom boom boom.
Boom.
Boom, boom. All right. Thanks, everybody, for being here tonight and putting up with us. Most appreciated as always. Thank you for all the super chat hits tonight, including some double hits from a few people, including Izzy and the chairman. And I saw Steve Lapointe, I think, might have hit twice. And I don't have the whole list. I think there were a couple of them earlier that I may be leaving out. But to everyone that hit super chat tonight, thank you very much. And Joe and I will be back tomorrow night at 9 o'clock Eastern Time. We will see you then. Good night, everybody.
Good night.